You are listening to English Talk. A man buys an abandoned house in Vermont. Behind a hidden wall, a sealed door. Behind that door, a room no one had entered in 40 years. And on the table inside, a letter that said, "Do not dig." He dug anyway. Stay with us. This story will stay with you. Let's begin. Nobody buys an old house expecting to find a secret. Daniel Mercer was 41 years old, recently laid off from his job at a logistics company in Portland, Oregon. After his divorce finalized in March, he needed a fresh start. Something far from the city, far from the memories, far from everything that reminded him of the life he used to have. When his brother sent him a listing for a farmhouse in rural Vermont, Daniel almost ignored it. The price was wrong. Not too high, too low, suspiciously low. He drove up on a Thursday in late September. The house sat at the end of a gravel road surrounded by old maple trees that had already turned deep red and orange. It was a large property, 2 stories, a wraparound porch, a barn that had partially collapsed on one side. The real estate agent met him at the gate and apologized in advance for the condition. "It's been empty for a while," she said. "How long?" Daniel asked. She paused just a moment too long. "About 30 years. Daniel bought it anyway. He told himself it was an investment. He told himself the bones were good. He told himself a lot of things during those first weeks, because the truth was simpler and harder to admit. He had nowhere else to go. The first month was brutal. The heating system was dead. 3 of the upstairs windows had cracked during some long ago winter and been covered from the inside with wooden boards. The kitchen ceiling had a water stain the shape of a running man, and every time Daniel looked at it, he felt vaguely uneasy in a way he could not explain. But he worked. Every day from early morning until the light failed, he worked. He was good with his hands, had spent summers during college doing construction, and the physical exhaustion was exactly what he needed. No time to think, no time to remember. He started with the upper floor, then worked his way down. By the time November arrived, the house was livable. Cold, creaky, and strange in the way all old houses are strange, but livable. Then he started on the basement. The basement door was in the kitchen, set into the floor beneath a heavy braided rug that looked like it had not been moved in years. Daniel pulled it up, found the iron ring handle, and lifted the door. A smell rose up immediately. Damp earth, old wood, and something else underneath it all. Something faint and sweet that he could not identify. He went down. The space was larger than he expected for a house this size. Low ceiling, dirt floor in some sections, and poured concrete in others. Rough stone walls along 3 sides. A single bare bulb hung from a cord in the center. Daniel pulled the chain. The bulb flickered twice, then held. He spent an hour down there checking the foundation, looking for cracks, testing the floor joists above with a long-handled tool he pressed against the wood. Everything seemed solid. He was almost finished when he noticed the wall. The south wall was different from the others. The other 3 walls were original stone, fieldstone, probably laid when the house was first built in the early 1900s. But the south wall was drywall, more modern drywall, the kind manufactured after World War II. Someone had come into this old basement and built an entirely new wall directly over the original stone. Daniel stood in front of it for a long time. He pressed his knuckles against the surface and knocked. The sound that came back was hollow, a deep, resonant emptiness, like knocking on a door that opened onto something vast and waiting. He went upstairs and got his tools. It took him 40 minutes to remove enough drywall to see what was behind it. Not stone, not pipes, not insulation or electrical wiring, or any of the practical things he had been telling himself he would find. A door. Wooden, narrow, painted black at some point in the distant past, the paint now peeling away in long curls. Iron hinges, heavy and dark with age. No handle on this side, just a small hole where a handle had once been mounted. The screws long since removed by someone who did not want it opened from the outside. Daniel stood very still. The house was quiet above him. Outside, wind moved through the maple trees. He could hear it even down here. A low, slow sound, almost like breathing. He found a flathead screwdriver, worked it into the edge of the door, and pushed. The door swung inward with a sound he would never forget. A long, low groan, like something waking after a very long sleep. The air that came through was cold, colder than the basement, colder than it had any right to be. Daniel raised his flashlight and stepped through the doorway. The room was roughly circular, unusual for a house like this, maybe 10 feet across. The walls were the original fieldstone, curved and uneven. The ceiling was low and arched, like a cellar built long before the house above it existed. Against the far wall stood a wooden table. On the table, a metal lantern with a cracked glass panel, a glass bottle with dark residue dried at the bottom, and a tin box roughly the size of a shoebox, its lid closed. On the left wall hung something that made Daniel stop moving entirely. A map, hand-drawn on paper that had gone the color of weak tea. It showed the property, the house, the barn, the gravel road, the tree line to the north. But it also showed something else. A series of marks in the surrounding woods, connected by dotted lines, forming a rough circle around the entire property. At the center of the circle, marked with a small red X, was the room Daniel was standing in right now. He crossed slowly to the table and opened the tin box. Inside, a leather pouch containing 17 old coins. He would later have them identified as late 1800s American silver dollars. A folded piece of paper, and beneath the paper, wrapped carefully in a piece of oilcloth, a small glass vial containing a dark liquid, sealed with wax. Daniel unfolded the paper with careful hands. The writing was old, cursive, faded, but perfectly legible. If you have found this place, then I am gone, and there is no one left to protect it. The coins are payment, for your silence or for your trouble, whichever you prefer. The vial must not be opened. I cannot explain why in this letter. I can only tell you that I spent 30 years of my life making certain it stayed closed, and I am asking you, a stranger I will never meet, to do the same. The marks on the map show where the others are buried. They were here before the house. They will be here long after. Do not dig. E. H. Calloway, October 1971. Daniel sat on the dirt floor of that hidden room for a long time. He read the letter 3 more times. He looked at the map on the wall. He looked at the vial, dark and sealed and patient on the table in front of him. Outside, the wind had picked up. He could hear it moving through the trees. That low, slow sound. Closer now, it seemed. Or maybe he was simply more aware of it than he had been before. He thought about E. H. Calloway. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and a cup of coffee he kept forgetting to drink, and he searched the name. Edmund Harris Calloway, a local landowner, born 1901, died October 1972. 1 year after writing the letter. He had owned the property for decades and died without heirs. The house had passed to the county, then cycled through several brief and unsuccessful ownerships before sitting empty for 30 years, until Daniel. There were no records of what Calloway had done on the property during those decades. No records of neighbors. No records of anything unusual. Just a man who had lived alone on a large piece of land in rural Vermont, and who had spent 30 years, his own words, protecting something. Daniel returned to the basement the following morning. He stood in front of the map for a long time. Then he went to his truck, took out his shovel, and walked into the woods. He found the first one 12 feet from the tree line, exactly where the map indicated. A stone box, roughly made, sealed with a flat piece of slate, laid carefully across the top. He stood over it for a full minute before kneeling down. He thought about the letter. He thought about the words, "Do not dig." He told himself he had already dug. He told himself that opening it was a different thing entirely. He lifted the slate. Inside the box was another vial, identical to the one on the table inside the house. Dark liquid, wax seal, unbroken, patient. He found 6 more over the following 3 days, placed at the points of the rough circle drawn on the map. Each one identical, each one sealed, each one waiting. On the 4th day, he brought all 7 into the hidden room and set them on the table beside the original. 8 vials now, in a row. He stood back and looked at them in the beam of his flashlight. The liquid in each vial moved when he tilted them. Slowly. Too slowly, he thought, for something that was simply liquid, almost reluctantly. He set them down and did not touch them again that night. That was 3 years ago. Daniel still lives in the house. He finished the renovations the following spring. The kitchen got new countertops and a fresh coat of paint, and the water stain on the ceiling, the one shaped like a running man, is gone now, covered over. The wraparound porch has been repaired. In summer, he sits out there in the evenings and watches the tree line. He has never opened the vials. He has never told anyone what he found beneath the house. Not his brother, not the few neighbors he has gotten to know over the years. Not anyone. He keeps the hidden room exactly as he found it. The lantern, the bottle, the tin box, the map still hanging on the curved stone wall. The 8 vials in a row on the wooden table. He replaced the drywall in front of the door, though he did not seal it. He can still get in and out easily. He goes down there sometimes, on quiet evenings when the work is done, and the house has settled into its nighttime silence. He stands in the low circular room and looks at the vials. He thinks about Edmund Calloway, a man born in 1901 who spent 30 years of his life protecting something he would not name, who died 1 year after writing a letter to a stranger, asking that stranger to continue what he had started. He thinks about the slow, dark movement of the liquid inside the glass. He thinks about the words on the map, the dotted circle, the red X at the center, the marks in the woods that he now knows by heart. And sometimes, on the quietest nights, when the wind moves through the maple trees in that low and rhythmic way that sounds almost like breathing, he thinks he understands why Calloway never left. Some things do not need to be understood. They only need to be kept. End.